Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. It's Friday, and you know what that means.
Front Office Friday!
Let's go. Front Office Friday, the NBA trade deadline. It approaches. All kinds of news coming out. In fact, right before we came on the air here, we've got more news coming out. Plenty of things to talk about on today's show, and we've got a special guest today. It's Jake Fischer from Yahoo. Jake, thanks so much for coming on.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me. How you doing?
We're doing well. We're hanging in there. Obviously, it's at a very exciting time of the year. We've got a ton to talk about. Before we get into all the trade deadline stuff, though, and we've got a million different topics to get into today, but you wrote a book called Built to Lose. Can you tell us a little bit about that for our audience who maybe is not familiar with it at this point?
Yeah, it's been out for a little while, so I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to hawk it again. But, trade deadline, people are asking for me to make appearances. Let's get some more sales going,
There you go.
It's really an insider account of, like, what it's like to be in front offices. So anyone who's a listener to this show and wants to geek out on the cap nerdery and, like, the conversations that happen that might not have led to things, or the conversations that do lead to things happening, there's, like, a ton of real fly on the wall stuff from draft rooms all around the league from 2013 to 2016 in Sam Hinkie's Sixers and Danny Ainge's post KG Paul Pierce Celtics, the Ryan McDonough Phoenix Suns, the crazy Kings under Vivek Ranadive when they hired Pete D'Alessandro, Keith's Orlando Magic and the Rob Hennigan days, a bunch of stuff. It's stopovers with Cleveland atop those 2013-14 drafts, Minnesota. A lot about the Lakers and all the craziness trying to navigate the final years of Kobe's career while they were obviously still at the bottom of the league. So shout out to Lakers fans and getting to spend a lot of time talking about Kobe on the anniversary of his death as well. So there's just a lot in there that I think any NBA fan would really like, especially listeners of this program who are soaking up all the cap minutia and the kind of power plays and the dynamics that happen in the NBA marketplace.
Well, and that is, it is, I've got one question here that came in and said, is it on Amazon? It is
Sure.
on Amazon. Is there anywhere else that people should find this, Jake?
Where books were sold. I was just about to say the title, Triumph, the publisher, their website, bookshop.org. I think it's on Target. Yeah, it's everywhere.
All right. So, guys, make sure you go check that out. That is, everything you described is right up the alley of our viewers and our listeners. So, very exciting stuff there.
Let me jump in
Go
here.
ahead, Keith.
Great read. Like it's obviously it's right up my alley. So like I'm going to like it, but it was really, really well done. The depth of the reporting you did is so good on this. And guaranteed, folks, there's stories you haven't heard or read if you go read this book. It was really, really good. So I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I talked to over 300 people around the league, from like star players to GMs to power agents to like the 10-day contract guy who's 10 days in the league were the highlight of his life. So there's a lot of different perspectives from every vantage point of the NBA and behind the scenes. Yeah.
Amazing stuff for sure. Definitely everybody check that out. Jake, you not long before we went on the air here, I know a piece of yours came out, a trade deadline notebook. Mm-hmm. There's like 50 different things in there for us to get into. So I'm just gonna hand it over to you. What do you think is the most interesting thing from there that we should really start with?
Yeah, I was hoping to get it out in time so we could discuss it here, and
that worked out great.
Right with enough window. To me, one of the most noteworthy details is Kyle Lowry's not going to be reporting to Charlotte. I mean, I guess he will, in theory, do what needs to be done to clear the medical testing and whatnot, but he's not going to be with the franchise, to my knowledge, at least through the deadline, and I would expect he won't be there after either, with potential buyout opportunities and whatnot. So that's just something to keep an eye on. If you're a Hornets fan, you're not going to see him in your teal honeycomb jerseys anytime soon, like Bruce Brown is in Toronto. Even though Bruce Brown is definitely someone I think a lot of teams have interest in, and he's one of the premier names on the market. But you factor in Bruce Brown into the top of the story, which to me was, whenever a trade early happens, try to start to think about the dominoes that can fall from it. And Terry Rozier getting moved for a real first-round pick with some funky protections, being that the Miami Heat don't have a lot of second-round picks in their cupboard to like turn a first into 2 seconds at some point. They had to do a similar thing. I didn't realize at the time when I first got the protections news that they also did a similar thing with the 2025 pick that's out the door that Oklahoma City has now, where that pick is lottery protected in 25 and then becomes completely unprotected in 26. Like that's the same exact framework with the 27 pick out the door that Miami sent to Charlotte for Rozier. So it's not a surprise that we're seeing that price point be the point for Tyus Jones. And I'm hearing like at least a first for Tyus Jones in Washington, for Malcolm Brogdon in Portland, for Bruce Brown in Toronto. And we're hearing 2 firsts and a strong starting player for DeJounte Murray in Atlanta. So that's kind of the top tier of the point guard market, if you will. I know Bruce Brown's not exactly like the standard floor general that those other names really are, but he was a point guard in college. He's a real secondary ball handler, played, I guess, like true, lead ball handler minutes when he was supplanting that bench unit in Denver's playoff run last year. So there's definitely plenty of teams like the Lakers, the Knicks, chief among them, who think he could have a similar role for them this postseason.
Now there's Keith and I have been talking about this time of year, you have a lot of teams that are asking for a lot, right? They put a player out their market. What do you want? Everything, right? Everything, even the 10th guy. Oh, it's a first round pick, no question. And then once you get closer to the deadline, things start to get a little more realistic. This deadline has kind of been moving a little bit quicker, though. We're already seeing some deals come and go. How realistic is it? Do you think that like Tyus Jones nets a first round pick, or that some of these asking prices actually get met?
It's a great question. It's interesting. Like if you look one way, it does feel like the deadline's moving fast. And then the Terry Rozier deal, to my understanding, like went pretty quickly. Like the Heat dropped 4 straight games or whatever it was. They have a clear need. They've had a guy that they've been targeting who him and his representation were targeting Miami. Like, doesn't seem like there was really much complications there. And then you wake up Wednesday and Thursday and you're making calls, and it doesn't seem like anything else is close. So sure, we had 3 deals get done, but it doesn't feel like there's like a real rapid fire of stuff happening. And I think to your point, Trevor, a lot of that is because, like Washington's price point on Tyus Jones, we talked about, that they want 2 first-round picks by all account, and probably more if they can get it for Kyle Kuzma. Like the Wizards are definitely a team that I don't expect them to drop their asking price, because they didn't get back the 4 unprotected picks that Brooklyn got for Kevin Durant, for example, or the 5 years of draft capital that Utah got for Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell for when the Wizards sent out Bradley Beal this summer. They got some pick swaps that could be pretty valuable with Phoenix, depending on how things shape up with the Suns. But the Wizards need draft capital to really, furnish out this rebuild and give themselves a couple extra darts to throw at the dartboard to get all-star potential talents like Bilal Coulibaly in the door. Other teams like Brooklyn, where they've said in the past they want 2 first-round picks for Dorian Finney-Smith and a first for Royce O'Neal, and even like Malcolm Brogdon in Portland. I think those types of teams who are in much stronger standing, like Brooklyn's situation, I'm going to have their game against the Knicks from Tuesday night up on my monitor here, and it's like I know how it finishes, so it's kind of like watching the film of a car crash before the collision happens. But, I don't think the Nets are in like. And sure, they sent out those 4 picks for James Harden. Like they got that return back for Kevin Durant, like we talked about. So while they're in a weird spot right now where tanking doesn't necessarily benefit them this season because they don't have their pick, like I don't think the Nets are as desperate for additions or tweaks or whatever than I think maybe rivals are thinking that they could be or might be. So like those types of teams, I could see them holding up their price point, but like it is this gamble that you have to think about when every team only has a limited asset pool. Like you only have 1 first and 1 second round pick every year until things happen, right? Like I use a lot of silly analogies like to explain to people, but also like how my brain works so I can think about it. Like I think sometimes with an asset pool, teams look at this season, this 2023, 2024 campaign, the next one as like a turnaround the monopoly board, right? Like you want to make sure you have enough money to get past all the bad landing spots. So if you land on them, that analogy translated to, can you have enough second round picks in your pocket when you have an injury, or you get the point. So
Sure.
I think a lot of the teams that are looking on like that year-to-year basis, when they realize, okay, we're not really necessarily meeting our expectations here. Okay, can we give up 2 second-round picks can we just take 2 second-round picks for this guy? Those are the types of teams that will drop their price. But the teams that don't have like real incentive to move off of their standpoint because they're not really playing for anything this year, they have much, much, much more future ramifications coming down the lines. Those prices, I think, will stay firm.
I think there's a lot to unpack in that, right? I think one part of it is with the Nets. I think what's important to recognize, Sean Marks has been here before, right? He's been in a situation where the Nets didn't have any of their own first round picks and came out of it clean, and that's before the KD Kyrie team up in Brooklyn. They were already on their way to being a good team and in a better place. So he's got that experience navigating that whole we don't have our picks and almost treating it as, hey, it's a sunk cost. Like, we can't do anything about that, but let's move forward. Washington, Brian Windhorst reported, I think it was on today's Hoop Collective. It all runs together this time of year, but they're under a mandate to get more first round picks. And that matches, at least what I've heard from what they're asking for, that matches your reporting, Jake. Mm-hmm. So I think the Wizards are in a spot where, yeah, we got to come out of this deadline or this summer. I think sometimes people get it everything because we want action, right? We want stuff to happen here in the next 2 weeks. But sometimes it is, hey, we got all the way to the draft. We've got till July. I'll repeat what I've said before. That Marvin Bagley trade where they took on his contract for next year signaled Washington is not trying to flip this thing quickly. This is a rebuild. They're in it now. And this is a front office that they know what they're doing with this. Michael Winger is one of the best cap guys around. He knows what he's doing. He's going to get in there. They're going to do something creative with those trade exceptions. They're going to do something creative with the guys that they have and try to figure out how do we turn this and turn this and turn this until my guess is whether it's in the next couple of weeks or it happens in June or July. By the time we're setting up for next season, they're not going to be sitting on an OKC type stash of draft picks. But we're going to be like, holy cow, the Wizards are sitting on a whole lot of draft capital just because that's where they're headed with this. And I think that's something that people need to keep in mind. Just these windows are maybe a little bit longer than we generally give them credit for being, just because some of these teams, they're not in a rush to do things today. They're not going to take a bad deal. Guy like Tyus Jones, yeah, you might have a little bit more pressure because he's a free agent at the end of the season. But Kuzma, Poole, even Gafford, those guys, you have more time if you need to figure it out.
I think they like Tyus Jones enough, though, where if they don't get the pick that they're looking for, they could just re-sign him and run this whole thing back all over again, just like they're thinking with Kyle Kuzma, being that he is on a long-term deal. So, yeah, if one thing about Tyus Jones, and I feel like it's funny, like at this time period too, I'm trying to figure out what things are easier to say out loud than to write because things get screen grabbed and disseminated and like there's more context to, so like I could feel like a podcast is a better like forum to discuss this. Like teams want Tyus Jones, but the Wizards are pricing him as a starting point guard, and he is like truly, based off of what I've understood from conversations around the league, he is like truly considered to be one of the lower end starting point guards, clearly an elite backup. And I don't see a lot of teams wanting to pay the price valuation that the Wizards have for him right now, to the point where I am skeptical he's going to get moved. Like every team I hear being linked to him, I wonder, will they actually, and after checking around it, like I start to get skeptical that they're actually going to be willing to meet the Wizards price. And people are just like killing him on the defensive side of the ball right now. Like one guy said to me yesterday, I mean, why would I give a first with Tyus Jones? You can't guard a traffic cone, which is like a lot of that, I think, is the agitation and the trying to knock the price point down to what we're talking about earlier. But I do think it's explanatory of that pessimism I'm saying, where I'm not so certain he's going to get moved because I just don't know if the price is going to get met.
I think the other challenge we're running into now is, as your piece lays out today for Yahoo, there's a lot of point guards available, and there's not nearly as many teams that are looking for them. This is probably, in the time I've been watching the NBA, this is probably as deep as the league's ever been in point guard talent, because we're talking about a guy like Tyus Jones, who's having a really good year.
Yes.
But to what you just said, Jake, he's valued as a high-end backup. He's a guy who, much like his role was with Memphis for a few years, he's a great backup. And if your guy's going to be out 2-3 weeks, he can step in. He's going to get you by, and you're going to be fine. But he's probably not somebody you're plugging in on a contender to say, hey, take us, where we need to go. And that's a little bit of the challenge, I think, that is holding things up. The one team that really needed a point guard, they went and got one this week in Miami. Now, there's other teams that could use one. Like, I personally think Minnesota could use a backup point guard for Mike Conley, because every time he leaves the floor, everything gets sideways. It gets super messy for them, and they could really use somebody. I think they're a team that if it goes the buyout route, should be all over Kyle Lowry. They should be pitching him, come here, play 15, 20 minutes, and you might be enough to really lift us into maybe finals contention, if that's where we're headed. And I think that's going to be interesting to watch that market develop over the next 2 weeks. Now, we all know the big thing that could change this: somebody rolls an ankle, somebody has a more severe injury in the next 2 weeks. All of a sudden, a lot of these teams that are like, why would we give a first for Tyus Jones? Are like, hey, Washington, will you take a first for Tyus Jones? Because they're in a completely different place than they were a week ago.
As someone who rolled my ankle in Sunday Rec League, I understand. Yeah.
It is not a fun experience.
You gotta be
That's
careful,
for sure.
man. That's why you play horse now. You don't actually play full scale pickup, man. Maybe a little 3-on-3.
My ability to not be bad at basketball has helped me make a lot of connections around the league. I'll say that. Some pickup runs in summer league. So we always take an opportunity to try to not make a fool of ourselves out there. But yeah, I think your point about Minnesota is really good for two reasons. With one, like it's in the story, they definitely are looking around at that market. And I mean, Tim Connolly, who's the lead executive in Minnesota, is the one who, I guess, no, wait, what's the connection between him and Tyus Jones? There's some connection there. I don't know.
I don't know. I'd have to.
Forget my ability to not land that plane. But Minnesota's a team that has looked in at Tyus. I just don't know if they're going to be able to get. I mean, from a salary standpoint, from the asset standpoint, to get there. But yeah, with Kyle Lowry, I was asking someone who is in the Kyle Lowry equation, where's an obvious buyout spot besides Philly? That's the one I was able to pin down. That's the one I wrote. I mean, it's clear, he's from the area, played at Villanova, has a relationship with Daryl Morey, has a relationship with Nick Nurse. The connections are abundant, and they're one of the few contenders and the best team in the East that has the ability to sign a buyout player who has a salary above the non-taxpayer mid-level this season. So it's all the signs would seem to align, but then talk to some people at Philly and they have a full roster. They're not necessarily gonna waive someone to bring on Kyle Lowry. So I'm trying to think man, Kyle Lowry is he's not the all-star champion of old. There's a reason that he sent out a first-round pick to get off of his contract and acquire someone else. But he's too good on a vet minimum prorated salary to not be in the league. So I'm trying to figure out a place that made. And Minnesota was. I mean, I haven't heard that, but that's the same type of looking at the board, looking who's available, looking who the bidders are going to be. Minnesota's one thought I had for you, Keith. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard Minnesota, which is a direct connection to Tim Conway. I've also heard they're interested in maybe Monte Morris. He's a guy that they may have some interest in as well. We'll see. The Pistons right now, like everybody, like we talked about, everybody's asking for a lot. That'll change within the next 2 weeks. A lot of people in the chat are saying Tyus Jones played for the Wolves. Yeah, we know that, but Tim Conley wasn't there when he played for the Wolves.
Yeah,
so Tim Conley.
It's one of those things. Two people said, "Oh yeah, Tim Conley," and he wasn't with Denver. I don't know what.
I'd have to think about that one. That's interesting.
Maybe they drafted him and traded him. I don't remember.
Maybe.
There's too much out there.
17,000 notes in my Google Doc that I keep track of things in, and I haven't organized them in 2 weeks. So that's probably on me too.
I hear you. Yeah, there's times when I'll come back and I'll be like, I know there's something there, and then I'm combing through, and I still because I'm old, I still do a lot of handwritten notes. So then I'm like trying to go back through and read handwriting that I wrote like on the top of my knee, or off the top of a trash can somewhere in a concourse talking to somebody. So
well, yeah, I do a Google Doc because you can do it on the computer, and if like you're on the subway and someone calls you, and you can just pull it up on your phone, and
that's the way to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the way to do it. Keith still carries with him a Trapper Keeper, though. So, that's
yeah, almost. I don't like to go anywhere without my laptop, but I keep a notebook. I have a notebook and a pen. So it's all I'm missing is a hat with a little tag in it that says Scoop. I'm ready to go, man. Well, let's do it, or news or something like that. So Jake, what couple things I wanted to get into, because I know these are questions people ask all the time of us, so they know kind of where Trevor and I stand. Where are we at with Zach LaVine right now?
Yeah.
So this Detroit stuff that's come out recently, I'm not taking credit for it, but like I had this idea when the first stuff ever happened and Detroit was in town. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I talked to Jade and I mean, the Pistons were like 11, 12, 13 games on the shy. Like it wasn't anywhere close to the record, but it was looking dire, And I remember talking to Jaden Ivey pregame about his lack of consistent minutes, and it was interesting to me because he was a starter the year before, and he was his Rookie of the Year finalist, and then new head coach comes into town, and he just like was kind of absent from the rotation. And Monty Williams, the new head coach, of course, had a kind of similar situation the year before in Phoenix, where he directly called Jay Crowder and said, "You're not going to start for us," and that created a whole conniption, and Jay Crowder didn't show up, and then he was someone we were talking about on podcasts about a trade possibility for 6 months. So I was just curious, from my understanding of the league, like, did Monty Williams talk to Jaden Ivey in the same way? And Jaden Ivey said no. And it was just like an interesting contrast. Like I wasn't trying to draw any line, I was just asking. But then people really took it off, and like people were outraged Monty Williams didn't talk to Jaden Ivey, and I was just thinking, man, well, if he's not even like involved in Detroit, Zach LaVine makes a ton of sense there, just from the standpoint of like Cade Cunningham is technically like a point guard, right? And he needs more of like a secondary ball handler guy than a true one next to him. And the disgruntledness, like the Bulls getting with Zach in Chicago, the Bulls getting some type of premium asset who's not in theory, but all that has now changed, I think, since Ivy has become a real solid fulcrum of what Detroit is doing. And you had the reporting coming out from James Edwards at The Athletic that him and Asar and Jalen Duren, along with Cade Cunningham, are the quote-unquote 4 untouchables in Detroit, which, to me, like my biggest thought is, well, there are teams like New Orleans who will be happy to hear about that with Isaiah Stewart not being included, more so than like the Zach LaVine thing being obvious. Because as much as Jaden Ivey and Bojan Bogdanovic seems like a perfect deal for both sides, doesn't seem like the Pistons want to put Jaden Ivey in anything right now. I know they were resistant to putting him in any conversation with Atlanta about DeJounte Murray. So I just think the Pistons are like looking at things like they were involved in the Siakam stuff before he went to Toronto. They're the worst team in the league. They're going to have a ton of cap space next year. They do have draft capital to play with, but they don't necessarily have like an obvious direction moving forward. I mean, to me, it seems more clear that like Cade and Duren are like your poles of your lineup, and like who knows what Asar is going to become. I mean, the guy like can't shoot from outside 5 feet, and it's just like the reality. It's what people were talking about, both the twins all throughout their time in Overtime Elite. They look awesome at Summer League, and it's like, oh, well, maybe the shooting's not that big a deal. And then you'll flash forward. I don't even know what the numbers are, but someone yesterday told me that the two twins combined shooting percentage is below Anthony Black's 3-point percentage, and Anthony Black is not a threat from outside right now. So that's a ramble to say, like, I think the Pistons are throwing a lot on the board. They're the only team, though, at all I've heard for Zach LaVine, like, at all in God knows how long. Like, Lakers have not been interested. Philly has not been interested. Atlanta has not really been interested when the Bulls called about trying to flop him for DeJounte. So right now it seems like Pistons are bust, but we hadn't heard the Pistons for him for so long. So who's to say another team couldn't come into the mix?
Now, what do you think about this? I mean, strategically for the Pistons, typically teams that are in the Pistons position that are sitting on the bottom would not be buyers on the trade market. They'd be sellers. They would be looking to recoup draft capital and everything they can and try to build moving forward. What do you think about this idea that they are, you mentioned them being interested in Siakam, them potentially getting in that conversation for DeJounte Murray, now Zach LaVine, them adding guys that can help right now. Conceptually, what do you think about that strategy from them? Because this is not typically the road that we see teams in their position travel.
For sure. And it's confused rival teams dating back to last February when they had definitely multiple offers of first-round picks. And from my understanding, there was at least one offer of 2 first-round picks for Bojan Bogdanovic, and they said no. Ooh. So, I mean, it's curious definitely why, but Bojan had strong ties with that front office, being that Arn Tellem and the ownership group, his vice chairman, he was Bojan's agent. And I think the Pistons did have the goal of being the Houston Rockets this year, of keeping that veteran talent in place, maybe adding a couple pieces like they did Monty Morris on the edges, and just like taking incremental steps forward. So that's going to be their plan too this summer. Like they're going to be almost identical to what the Rockets were in terms of cap space team, where they will be one of the worst, if not the worst teams in the league. And they're going to need to convince veteran winners to come join that situation. They're going to have to pay top dollar for it. So I think it's smart to be evaluating ways to do that now, as opposed to waiting on the open market, being that a difference in Detroit and Houston is also like Houston is a major market, even though it's not considered the New York Miamis out there. It's a massive sports market. State income taxes are a real thing to consider at these levels of salaries. And Ime Udoka, for everything that happened in Boston, has like largely been always considered a player's coach, and players wanted to go join him. So like you factor all those things together, Detroit's cap space, I mean, the last time they really had all that, they used it on Ben Gordon and Charlie Villanueva, right? So like if you can get a guy now and can count on him as your free agent acquisition, who's on a long-term contract like Zach LaVine, he's kind of technically like have to show up. So I do think it's like pragmatic and I guess inventive to like look at it now, even though it goes against conventional wisdom. That being said, you can do that while also get a couple seconds for Alec Burks and a second for Monty Morris and a first for Bojan Bogdanovic and like accomplish both, which seems like what Utah is trying to do.
Yeah, if we stick on the Pistons real quick, because that's what I've heard. I keep hearing they want to do the Rockets, right? They want to do the same thing the Rockets did, but they might be willing to be an early mover, do a little bit of pre-agency work, because there's not a Fred VanVleet in this free agent class. There's not even really like Dylan Brooks, because as you go through the free agents, all the tier 1 guys look like if they don't sign extensions, they're very likely to just stick where they are. So whether that's Paul George or LeBron or Siakam or OG Anunoby now, we're just in a spot where free agency isn't that great. There's not again, like VanVleet, by the time we got there last summer, it was like, well, he might be the best actual free agent who may really change teams available. And then, it kind of went the way it went with him going to Houston. So that makes some sense to me. And I think I just wrote for Spot Track this week about buyers and sellers, and I called the Pistons. They're kind of an either because of what you said. They may sell off some guys, but they may turn around and say, hey, we traded Bogdanovic, but we also traded for Zach LaVine because we feel like this has a chance to lift us. And here's the thing, as crazy as this sounds, because we're sitting here and they're like, 5-39 or whatever they are. They're not that far off from being in the play-in picture, because the bottom of the East play-in, it is just not very good. It's just a bunch of teams that aren't like blowing it away. It's not like teams that are sitting there that are going to win 45 games just to get in the play-in picture. Like they've got a lot of ground to make up, but you hit on the right guys, they could probably pull that off very quickly. In that, I'm interested because you said Utah. So Utah is a team a lot of people like to keep looking at. We get a lot of questions. Are they going to move Markkanen? And I think, and you could speak to this, everything I've heard, Markkanen's not on the table. Like that's not a thing that's going to happen. Same thing with guys like Kessler, George, they're rookie scale guys. But guys like Kelly Olynyk, Taylor Norton Tucker, Jordan Clarkson potentially. Those guys are all guys that the Jazz are looking at. Not that they're necessarily shopping them, but they're willing to take your phone call. Is my read on that accurate?
Yeah, that's my understanding too. And John Collins, I think, is someone they're actively looking to get off of, though. Like
Poor John Collins.
Yeah.
Jake, we have a running thing on this show that John Collins every year that we've done it. Like we could probably go back and we've probably talked about him more than any player in the history of the show, just because every year for Atlanta, almost as before he even signed the extension, he was in trade rumors. So that's just where we're just so you know, that's why we kind of laugh at that.
Yeah, no, I know. I know it's been a sensitive subject on his side of things.
Yeah, well, and what's funny is I think Trevor, I'll speak for you here. We're both fans of John Collins. Like for us, it's in this year he's refound his shot, right? Like last year was a mess for him, and I've been told by a lot of people whatever was going on with his finger was really bothering him. He couldn't feel the ball the right way. It was just made a mess. He probably shouldn't have played as much as he played a year ago, and should have just gotten that really corrected. This year, he's shooting the ball well. He's rebounding. He's actually played pretty solid as a starting five, which is good because previously it had been Collins can slide over and play the five some. This year, he's really started there. So I feel like he's somebody, again, if you're a team that's in position to take on his contract, that would have interest to me. I think he's a good player.
Detroit was one team that had at least talked with Atlanta about him previously, so keep that in mind.
Yeah,
Ooh,
it
all right.
could be interesting. All right, Trevor, we're going to take some of the questions from the chat.
Well, let's talk about the big name that's on the market right now, or the biggest name right now, and that's DeJounte Murray. Selfishly, for my Lakers, I need to find out what's going on here. So, Jake, we know you have to run in just a few moments, and Keith, you and I can stick around and answer some of the questions, but where are things sitting currently with DeJounte Murray, the Lakers, everybody else that might be involved in the DeJounte Murray pursuit as well?
Yeah, I think the Lakers are the most aggressive team, or have been to my knowledge so far, for DeJounte. That 2029 pick and the swap and D'Angelo Russell, that's been reported pretty much everywhere at this point, where the Hawks would need a third team to take back D'Lo's salary. I think that's definitely below what the Hawks want. The Hawks want, to my knowledge, a better player than D'Angelo Russell, and they also are less inclined to be taking back future money. And D'Lo's player option, that I believe is $18.6 million for next year, is definitely, I think, giving a lot of teams pause who would want to deal with the Lakers directly, or just be contacted to be a third possible team to take on his salary. So that being said, like, there's going to need to be another team to emerge to give a better offer than that. And at this point, I haven't found one. It's still early. We're still 2 weeks away. Things could definitely ratchet up. And look, like, one thing I haven't written yet that is, I know to be true, like, the Hawks don't have to trade DeJounte, and they didn't trade John Collins, multiple times at the deadline, even though he was on the board. So I do think it's possible he's still there. I do think it's possible the Hawks stay firm at their 2 first-round picks and then some, being that they gave up 3 for him just 2 years ago. But for now, like, if I'm just looking at the board and looking at teams that on point guards, teams that have contacted the Hawks on Murray, and what the things are there, like, I think the Lakers have him at the top of their board, and he is the best point guard available, so it would make sense. And they're the team that's put the most serious offer together. So it's possible there's just still like a gap to be closed, and we're less than 2 weeks away from figuring out if it does.
Now, D'Angelo Russell has been on a heater for the last couple of weeks since returning to the starting lineup. He's been going berserk. Does that really shift anything in terms of his value? That's a big debate going on among fans. Like, does this change perception of him at all? Or is this just this is kind of what he does because he can be so hot and cold?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think when it's a player who has never shot well before, who all of a sudden puts together a season, like a big man who all of a sudden is shooting 38% from 3, or like something along those lines. A 10-game sample stretch of a 8-year veteran at this point, I don't think dramatically changes someone's abilities or like just interest around the league and their chances of getting moved. Like, when Kobe White has a dramatic uptick of performance and whatnot, like, that changes some things for sure. But when a player just has a hot shooting streak, especially someone who's on, I mean, there was some. I'm gonna stop talking because I was gonna have another Tim Connolly moment. There's another player who Harrison Barnes going for 39 last night.
Sure.
While he's in all these trade conversations, like I don't think that's gonna make a team just go, oh, Harrison Barnes is looking great out there. Like he got hot for a couple. These guys are NBA players. They make $20 million for a reason. So I don't think it really dramatically shifts the scales at all.
All right, I got two quick ones because I know you got to go. So one's a fun one, one's just off the cuff. I don't want you to name any names, but what does your gut tell you? Do we get a superstar blockbuster trade before the trade deadline, like something that approaches the KD type levels? Probably not KD levels because he's KD, but something that's even close.
Yeah, my gut says no. I think this summer, depending on, I mean, if you're not looking at what's happening in Milwaukee and recognizing how much of a house of cards that situation is, then I think you're being naive. And they're one, second round exit away for who the hell knows what's going to happen there. And, everyone's looking at for Donovan Mitchell, but the Cavs don't want to move him. They just won 8 straight games. I mean, Joel Embiid, everyone wanted to prime for Philly. He's putting up 70 points and it seems happier than ever with Nick Nurse. So for now, I don't see. I mean, the Brooklyn situation was shocking, but like KD had requested a trade that summer, and Kyrie. I don't think there's anything lingering like that right now.
Perfect. All right, the fun one. How much sleep per night are you getting this time of year?
Honestly, this time of year is like fine. The week of the draft or the week of the deadline is tough. Like I'll be up 2-3 a.m. every night, but like. I have mostly the problem is like I have rumors running around in my head and I'm like dreaming about trades and like writing. I like write in my dreams too, which is weird. Like, I'll start like putting together because the phrasing of some of these things like people take so seriously. Where I'll have someone call me after a story and say, "Why'd you say exploring? Like we're just listening. Like exploring means we're not the ones doing. Like we're not making calls. We're taking calls." That type of stuff people get very sensitive about. So like in my head, I'm doing those like Mad Libs in my head almost while I'm trying to go to bed. So that's the challenge really.
And then you wake up thinking, wait, did I write that yet or no?
Or did I dream I wrote?
Did I dream that I wrote
what did I say?
Jake, we know you got to run. Let's close out with this. Doug, not Dave McMenamin, said, thank you, Jake. Come back again. Pistons fans since 1964. They'll be fine. Just young and Monty is stubborn. LOL. I think Doug speaks for all of us. Thank you, Jake, for coming on. We certainly do appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, go get Jake's book, everybody. Everybody check it out. Built to Lose. There it is on the screen again. You can get it on Amazon. We'll drop it in the show comments as well. A link to the Amazon page. So everybody go get Jake's book. I promise you'll really enjoy it. And there's a handful of teams that might be built to lose right now in the NBA that there might be some lessons in there on. So check that out for sure.
Appreciate you guys. See ya.
See you, Jake. Thanks for coming by. All right, Keith. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. We
got a lot of questions.
A lot of information in there from Jake. Really good stuff. Make sure you guys are following him. Read his stuff on Yahoo. I said this the other day. Jake talks a little detail in everything he writes. Yep. And then it always comes back around within a week or two later, and he drops some stuff in there about this team called on this guy last year or earlier this year, and those kind of things. Those are the things you want to keep an eye on for sure.
Those are the little pieces of the puzzle that can end up mattering a lot. Sometimes they don't, but oftentimes they do. It comes back and it'll matter. All right, let's get into some of our questions and comments here. Jeremy said, "Will we ever get front office show /LN merch?" I need to find time or I need to just assign someone to work on that and get that all set up. But at some point that would be great to do. But I have to figure out that whole process. That's not something I've done before. So I have to figure out.
Well, let's flip it. Would you guys buy front office show?
That's true. Yes.
Otherwise, I'm going to be giving them away for Christmas presents for years if you don't buy them. So that's the other thing. If you buy something with the front office show logo on it and wear it proudly, let us know.
Yeah, that's something that absolutely matters in terms of getting that stuff. We need to make a T-shirt with just Keith on it.
No, we do not.
A Keith shirt.
Nobody needs that. What we should do is a T-shirt with all like our clutch phrases on it. Like,
oh yeah,
it'll be interesting. Front office Friday. So
Yeah, front office Friday would be like, what would the phrases be on that? It would be front office Friday. I think I overuse the word, and I catch myself doing it. I've been lately saying the word absolutely too much as like just a connector or something, or a response to something.
For me, it would be, like I say that all the time, but it'll have to be so fast and like connected, like it's all one word, and it'll be interesting. That would be there, I think. So yeah,
that's another good one. That's another good one. Oh yeah, we could just put it. We need to make a shirt that just says scheduled nonsense and
yes,
unscheduled nonsense, something like
absolutely.
that.
Oh,
All right. Doug says, please no Zach LaVine for my Pistons.
I don't know
Money,
what $ me Ivy off limits means.
but okay. But
Okay,
Ivy off
sure.
limits, but no Zach LaVine for the. I mean, it sounds like they're the only team interested right now, which is something. I mean, for weeks we were hearing nobody was interested in Zach LaVine. So somebody is interested in him. So that part's, I mean, good for the Bulls. I'm not totally sold that that's what the Pistons should be doing. Should be going and adding like a Zach LaVine. I get though the idea that if they want to try to add some veterans this summer and try to do the Rockets thing, you probably need another piece in there to try to entice somebody to go to Detroit. In that sense, it could help. But I think the downside of doing something like that could be pretty great, because if things don't work out with him there, that's not going to be an easy contract to move off from.
Yeah, I like the idea of LaVine if they could relatively steal him. If it was like a package built around Bogdanovich and Burks and you got LaVine, I'm okay with that, because then I think that sets the Pistons on a path where you almost then lock into our we have to go get other guys too. We can't just kind of go there. That should be on the back of the shirt.
Yep. That should be
Like
on the
as you're
back of the
walking
shirt.
away.
Stay
Yeah.
safe and see you. Somebody put in the comment section. That should be the back of the shirt. And then we'll have front office Friday on the front or something like that.
Yeah, with the logo.
With the logo.
Like
With the logo.
7 people will be like, "Oh, cool. I listen to that too."
Yeah.
For now. Somebody put a couple comments in a language I don't read, so somebody if you want to translate those into English, we'll do our best to answer them for you.
Said by Sabatis, Thibault can veto any trade. Are the Blazers trying to move him? Grant, Brogdon feel like Portland should be sellers, but I've heard nothing. I think Brogdon is very much out there. They just want to get their price met on him. What about on like Robert Williams? How do you see that? And then Jeremy Grant. Those are guys who I feel like are in a lower tier in terms of priority to be moved. Brogdon feels like the guy that I'm pretty confident winds up getting moved before the deadline.
Yeah, Brogdon's caught up in a guard logjam there in Portland. You have Simons, Sharp, Scoot Henderson, Brogdon. One of those guys has seemingly been out with an injury all year long at various times. So that makes it a little bit different. So I think they will go into a place where Brogdon may get moved by this trade deadline. I think there's a good chance that happens. Grant, there's no signals they want to move him. He's pretty happy there. They believe they're not trying to have this be a 5-year rebuild in Portland. They're trying to be good sooner rather than later. Not that they're going to get reckless with adding guys or trading draft capital or anything like that, but they want Grant around. They signed him, and I do believe they signed him knowing, hey, Damian Lillard may still ask for a trade, but we believe in Jeremy Grant in this contract. And he's actually had a really solid season for them. Matisse Thybulle, they like him a lot because he's the best defender on the roster by a margin, and they need that. So I don't know that they're gonna trade him. I think what's interesting with Matisse Thybulle, they why he can veto a trade. If anybody's wondering with this, is because the Blazers matched the offer sheet he signed with Dallas. So that gives him 1-year veto. And under no circumstances for this year can he be traded to Dallas. So that changes things up a little bit there. That will expire when the offseason comes around. He'll be able to be traded at that point. And then people are throwing other names in the chat. I don't think there's a lot of other guys. Robert Williams, you asked about? That seems like one if a team says, hey, we'll give you a nice asset, whether that's a first-round pick or a couple really good seconds or even just a young player, and we can let him rehab with us, and then we'll get him on the floor next year because we feel like he can lift us. That you could see that happen. I think Portland might be more on the lines of let's just hang on to him ourselves and figure out where it goes. I think you're going to have to give them something real if you're going to get a guy like Robert Williams.
Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, Doug, not Dave, said, hope your back is better, Keith.
It is much better today. I'm almost back to normal.
Right on. That's awesome. This question says, this is Venkata said, any Clippers trade rumors for Pat Williams, PJ Washington, Bruce Brown, Jeremy Grant? Some
Not
of
on the
those guys,
last two. They're just too
that's what I'm just going to
expensive.
say.
Yeah,
Those are too
but
expensive.
Pat Williams, I haven't heard that one either. I haven't heard much about him at all. The Bulls seem content to let him stay and then play that out to restricted free agency this summer. We'll see what that looks like. PJ Washington is a guy I know the Clippers have had some discussions on. Now that the Hornets have set down a path of, hey, we're gonna basically we'll eat some salary and the like. We're rebuilding. If the Clippers are willing to throw a first round pick and maybe something else, maybe a guy like Kobe Brown or something like that in a trade, I think maybe they could get a PJ Washington, because the challenge with PJ Tucker is you got to eat next year's contract too. So I think that's a place where you want to keep an eye out.
What if PJ Tucker doesn't get moved at the trade deadline? What happens to him?
Nothing.
You
Maybe
think he
the
just
summertime.
stays?
Yeah, I think he just stays, because I think there's two things at play there. One, he's good insurance. If guys go down, the Clippers know they can put him out there, and he's at least going to give them something, right? And then I think the other piece is then he becomes 11 million in tradable salary in the summertime.
Yeah, agreed. It makes more sense for them just to hang on to him. Isham, Detroit should trade this year's draft pick. I don't think they're going to be doing that. I don't think they're going to be doing that.
Nope. Maybe, if like Victor Wembanyama becomes unexpectedly available, sure. But, no.
And that's not
Absolutely
happening. Let's see. Any PJ Tucker gets moved for campaign. I don't know about that.
Maybe. I don't know. I think Milwaukee's trying to do stuff. I know we like Jake hinted at it a little bit. They're very limited on what they can do. So that's the tricky part there.
And then similar question here.
Powerfully Ward center. I love it.
Wow.
I was sure that was supposed to say power forward or center.
Power forward. Yep.
But I like powerfully Ward. I like that.
Powerfully Ward. Yeah.
We talked about it. I mean, maybe Pat Williams is a guy. It wouldn't shock me if in the next 2 weeks we hear Pat Williams got moved in a team. That is a guy, a team like the Clippers could, and probably more teams like them should be focused on, because then you get his rights as a restricted free agent, and that gives you the ability to kind of control the process with a player you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. And I think that's important.
Agree. Yeah, agreed. Doug, not Dave, said, absolutely would buy merch, guys. Great job on the Lakers Nation roller coaster this week, Trevor. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for being patient with me. Tough year for my Pistons. It really is. It is a tough year for the Pistons. Totally understand it. Not easy when your team's in that situation, for sure. And you know what? All you can do when you're in that spot is just say it's a tough season. But when the team does come back around, when you get the right pieces, it's just going to make you all the more appreciative of those years, these tough times that you're in right now.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think the big part on that is I think you need to focus on the little things now. If you're the Pistons or any team in that situation, you're watching your kids, like Jalen Duren. I noticed the other night playing, he was when they played the Hornets. He is a much improved screener. And those are little things when you watch a team night in, night out, you start to pick up on. And maybe I'm last to the party on that. Maybe everybody else already kind of do that. But I think, it was just something that jumped off the page to me. So I think you just kind of keep looking at those kinds of things where you feel like, okay, there's a little something going on right there with that guy that's a little bit different. And, maybe Jaden Ivey's making better reads out of pick and roll. Thompson is, working on his jump shot. He's starting to hit from 10 to 15 feet. He's not yet, but maybe that starts happening. And those are the things you focus on when it feels like a lost season otherwise.
Small wins, not actual wins.
Yep.
That's what you're looking for. That's what
enough actual wins that it just doesn't get depressing, right? Like you pick up one at least every other week or so.
Keith, is there anything else that we touched upon a lot with Jake? Before we close out the show, was there anything else that you wanted to get into from today's news. I mean, there's still a number of things. Like, what do we think ultimately happens with Bruce Brown?
Yeah, I think I starting to feel like Toronto's going to flip him and move him. It's just there's a lot of stuff going on there. Local Toronto reporters have basically come out and said, if you're not Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, you're available for trade.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know that like RJ Barrett's like completely unavailable. I think that's just more we're reading the market. No, that's a big contract, and we're happy to have him. So that's going to be something that happens there. I think the challenge with Bruce Brown is some of the teams who would like to have him and want him most just have no real way to get him. Mark Stein had reported Denver would love to get him back. They just don't have any real way to get him. Like it's the contract's just a little too big. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. See, I just used it. That's going to be interesting. See, that should go on the t-shirt. I think that's something that would be a guy a lot of teams could use. It's just, can you trade for 22 million in salary? That's the biggest question we have to ask. To that point, Spot Track, we launched our trade machine last night, our version of the trade machine.
Let's go.
You go to spottrack.com. It's right there on the front page. You can pop in there. You can do any trades you want to do. You can trade players and picks and use trade exceptions. You can use draft rights, all sorts of stuff. There, we believe it is the most accurate and extensive trade machine that is available publicly that anybody could use. Yes, there are little bugs that we need to still work on. There it is right there, along with my Eastern Conference buyers and sellers at the trade deadline and some football stuff because there's always a lot of football stuff going on as well. But yeah, check that out. Play with it. Trade until your heart's content. There's a little camera icon. You can screenshot your trade if you want to share it on social media with folks. If you find things that are off or seem wrong, send us a note. We'll look into it and we'll work on it. We're really trying to get to a place where this is, we're really proud of this. I can tell you guys, Scott, our lead programmer, hundreds of hours and hundreds of hours went into building this trade machine. It is not an easy thing to do.
Very exciting stuff. Very exciting stuff. I have a feeling I'm going to be playing around with that a lot. And just maybe 3-team DeJounte Murray trades are going to be
you might be looking
flying
a little. Yeah. Where can we send D'Angelo Russell to? Yeah, you can do 3-team trades, 4-team. I mean, you technically, if you wanted to invest the time and effort into it, you could do a 30-team trade if you wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it. I think it would get very messy and there's no real way you're going to make it work, but you can if you want to. I will tell you guys too, or I want to get into very quickly. Miles Bridges seems more and more going on with him. The teams are interested in Miles Bridges. We know all of the off-court stuff that comes with that. We've said it repeatedly. You need to be very open to the PR hit that you're going to take, and you have to be very willing to own that and answer it. So that's something you got to get into there. But Phoenix Suns, that one came out today. Dwayne Rankin, who covers the Suns for the Arizona Republic, had that report that he's a guy that Suns have looked into. They said they've got a list of about 10 players that they're interested in. So that's something to keep an eye on here over the next little bit as well as we approach trade deadline 2 weeks out. Man, there's a lot going on right now.
Do you think we get through the weekend without having to cover a trade?
This weekend, yes. Next weekend, no. And the only reason I say next weekend, I'm at a soccer tournament, so
so that's how you know
that goes down. Yeah. There'll be something that will go down when I'm in the middle of a field with crappy signal and I'm barely able to follow it and can't figure it out. So that'll be how that'll play out.
Keith, I have posted content from a cruise ship before. I did this last summer. If I can do that, we can get you from a soccer field, and we will make it. We'll make it happen.
Content for me from a cruise ship this past summer too.
That's right. I did that too. We can make this work. I'm telling you, we can make this work. We will figure it out. If you have to be, it will only make it that much more legendary if you actually start breaking news from the sidelines of the soccer field.
Any news. That's
you know what I mean. Analyzing news. News.
Yeah, here's the good news. It's a local tournament, so I'll be home relatively reasonable times, we hope. So I'm very anxiously waiting for the schedule to come out with that. So yeah. But guys, 2 weeks out, not next Thursday, Thursday after, we'll be live for the trade deadline. So if you haven't subscribed now, you haven't put notifications on, go ahead and do that. Hit the like button on this episode as well. That will really help us out, help other people find the show. But subscribe, because we're going to be live for, let's just say, hours on the trade deadline. We don't know how many hours yet, but we'll go live a little before that. Maybe we'll even play with, hey, we're here in this trade, and we'll pull up the Spot Track trade machine and show you what it looks like in there, and be able to plug some stuff in, or plug some things in where it is that doesn't work. We're missing out, like the salaries don't match or something like that. And we can get in and play with those kind of things too. But we'll be doing that in a little under 2 weeks now on the 8th. We'll go live ahead of the trade deadline and straight through. So super excited for that. So we'll it's our time of year, man.
Let's go. This is a blast. This is a great time of year. So many different things that are happening around the NBA. By the way, I am right now subscribing to the Spot Track newsletter as I'm playing around with the trade machine here. I'm ready to go on that. But so many great things that are happening this time of year. So many different possibilities. I have a fun time just breaking down all the possible paths that a team can take in order to build things out. It's a lot of fun. So again, all of that is a roundabout way of saying subscribe to the Lakers Nation. See, I get caught in Lakers. It's like when you're at home. Did you ever do that when you used to like work someplace and then you go home and you pick up the phone and you answer it as though you're still at work? Back when you had a home phone.
Yes. Yeah. I used to do that all the time. I worked at a place where you had to answer the phone, hola. And I would answer it that way, like every time I picked up the phone, awesome. No matter where it was. Yeah, I would be like, "Hola, this is hello." And people like, "Excuse me, I'm looking for whatever." Yeah, so that hasn't happened thankfully in a while since I don't work in an office. But yeah, I used to. Yeah, it was not great.
So that's why I'm closing out this show, and I just automatically go into my Lakers Nation close. Back in the day when I was in college, it used to be I would pick up the phone and go, Pet Town Tropical Fish. I worked at a tropical fish store. We sold fish tanks and stuff like that. And people would be like, what? Oh, sorry. I forgot where I was for a moment.
My dad likes to answer the phone because if anybody wonders where my dad jokes come from, they come from my own dad. He'll answer the phone, the home phone at the house, regularly answer the phone, City Morgue. And then if he's feeling really playful, he'll say something like, City Morgue, you stab him, we'll slab him. Like he likes that. So I used to answer the phone at home, and it drove my mother crazy. She would get so mad. I would answer it, Smith Summer House, some are home, some are not.
That's pretty good. I like that.
She'd get really mad. So
I like that.
She didn't appreciate those kind of things. She would get very angry because then her friends invariably would be like, I called the wrong person, and hang up. And then they call back.
And then they call right back.
Fake Trevor says bilingual Keith. No. Hola was about the extent of that. I can understand more Spanish than I can speak, but not a lot. So
yeah, I'm about the same way.
Somebody asked, can we get an NBA player for our next guest? Probably not immediately, but you never know. We are going to try to have more guests join us when appropriate. So we'll see.
It's difficult, especially in season for a lot of the NBA players. But we're going to put a real effort into getting more guests on and do that sort of thing. So be on the lookout for that. Yeah. All right.
All right, everybody. Under 2 weeks to go. We are on the trade deadline clock. Keep everything locked in and ready to go. All the social feeds and follow everything here. We'll keep bringing you content. It was fun. Thanks to Jake Fischer for joining us today. Make sure you're reading and following Jake over on Yahoo. He's got all kinds of good information on all sorts of stuff. He was the first one I saw that tweeted out what the pick protections were on the Rozier Lowry trade there. Everybody else was a first round pick. Jake had what it was first. So he's got great stuff going on there. So we're really excited that he joined us, and we're excited for the trade deadline, man. We're almost there.
Almost there. Going to be a lot of fun. All right, everybody. Make sure you do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts as well. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.